This is my little Surinam cherry. Let me share just a little bit about Surinam cherries with you. Hi, it's Elise. I'm glad you stopped by the garden. First off, sorry about the neighbor's roosters. They've been doing that all day long. Okay, Surinam cherry. If you're new to growing Surinam cherry or you want to start growing Surinam cherry, here's some basics. I've been growing Surinam cherry, or been around Surinam cherries, ever since I was 6 years old. I've been growing them for decades. They are my very favorite fruit to come out and just pop off the tree and eat. This one, it looks a little scraggly, but that's okay. I'm in Zone 9B, or 10A, according to the new plant zone map. But I wanted to go ahead and do this video and show you this tree in case you are new to Surinams and your tree looks like this. Don't worry about it. It's winter stress. Now, we're at the end of February. The tree has put out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blossoms. And lots of the leaves have turned yellow and dropped off, but lots of new growth is coming out. Look at that pretty new green glossy leaf. It does look scraggly. It hasn't been pruned in quite a while. So let's cover all that. This is Surinam cherry, also called Pitanga, Brazilian cherry, cayenne cherry, lantern, pumpkin, Florida cherry, wild cherry, and more names. I have never called it anything but Surinam cherry, and that's certainly up to you what you want to call it. Although the first time somebody walked up and said, "Do you have a lantern cherry?" I didn't know what they were talking about. It is not native to Florida or the southeast of the United States or anywhere in the United States. It is tropical to South America. Now, it is naturalized in the warmer areas in the United States. Planting zones are usually 9 to 10, maybe a warm 8 if you have it planted somewhere where it has winter protection. But don't let that dissuade you from planting one. Surinam cherries actually come in a dwarf variety. You can grow them in containers and overwinter them. The Surinam cherry was named after Prince Eugene of Savoy, and he was around between 1663 and 1736. He was a very big patron of botany and horticulture. Really nice. Now, this tree took a little roundabout way to get back to us here in the southeast United States. The Portuguese explorers went to South America. They took it back to Asia and Europe, all those areas, and then it came back across to the United States. It came to Florida, in the 1930s. Got really popular around the 1950s and 1960s, especially as hedge plants, privacy fences, things like that. And then it kind of fell out of favor as a hedge plant, and it was quit being used. And now you have, from what I understand, a little problem finding Surinam cherries in nurseries. I would think a good place to find a Surinam cherry would be like Facebook Marketplace, garage sales, yard sales, plant sales, farmers market, things like that. So all of these yellow, yucky looking leaves are going to fall off. But just look at all of the blooms. And it does produce a really small, delicate white bloom. Has just a little bit of fragrance to me, but the pollinators love it. It is just full. Now, growing requirements. Full sun if you want it to bloom or to set fruit. Most tropical trees need full sun to set fruit. I do have some trees in full shade. They are absolutely gorgeous. The winter did not bother them. They're still green and glossy emerald colored leaves. but they don't set fruit like the ones out in the sun do. But wonderful plant. Well-draining soil. Although Surinam cherries do like water, especially when they're setting fruit, you want to give them a little bit more water to help that fruit go ahead and produce and grow and get juicy. But they don't want their roots sitting in water, and they have kind of a shallow root for some of the size of the trees. Height, now this one is about 12 feet tall. I have others in my landscape that's about the same size. So it can get large. But that is up to you, because it is an easy tree to prune back. Look at all this pretty new growth and all these buds. So if you're just going to let it grow natural, like I did this one, give it room. Okay, pruning. If you've got young trees that aren't ready to start producing, you can prune it basically anytime you wish, depending upon your variety and your location. I'm not pruning mine, obviously, because if I prune this now, although we're in the end of February, going into spring, I would lose all my fruit. So I know that the general recommendation is to prune early in the spring or in the fall, but you have to look at the individual plant. If your plant produces fruit and it fruits early spring, you don't want to prune it off then. So what I'm going to do is wait till all the fruit is over with. And then I'm going to come back and give this a really good pruning, because it hasn't had one in years. And I'll shape it all up, prune it all up, and it will just flush back out in all this beautiful greenery. Fairly disease and pest resistant. Medium growth. Medium water. I always give it a little more when it's actually producing fruit. And medium fertilization. And I also give it a little more fertilization when it's producing fruit. Now this is a hardwood, and it does prune very easily though. So that's the general maintenance and care. Very easy. Uses. Well, this tree is edible, medicinal, utilitarian, ornamental, great for the wildlife, great for the pollinators. The wildlife can hide in it, build nests, perch, play underneath the tree. So it's great for the wildlife. It is edible. You'll use these cherries, and they are a berry actually, and they are not related to the cherries we make pies out of. This is in the myrtle family. The cherries that we use to make pies with are actually in the rose family. But you can use it to make jams and jellies and pies, sauces, chutneys. You can make liqueurs with it, wines with it, anything you wish. You aren't going to see the berries in a grocery store very often. They have to be hand-picked. They have to be picked when they're ripe, because they won't ripen up much once they're picked. So they need to stay on the tree until they're ripe. And then by the time you got them into a grocery store, they would probably be too ripe and of no sellable value. But sometimes you can find them at farmers market and specialty stores. I'm going to come back and do another video when the fruit starts ripening. We'll talk more about the fruit at that time. I'll show you how to extract the seeds, plant it out, and I've got some seedlings I need to up-pot, and we'll do that too. Cherries, the cherries themselves. Let me put this out. If you've ever tried a Surinam cherry and you didn't like it, I mean, like it puckered your mouth up, and oh, it was really bad, it's because it wasn't ripe. On Surinam cherries, they have to be completely ripe. There's two basic types, although there's many, many, many varieties, but two basic types. The one type, the cherry is ripe when it's deep dark red. The cherry is red when it's a dark maroon, almost black. And the way to tell if your cherry is ripe is you just go up and you tap underneath the cherry. If it falls off in your hand, chances are it's ready to eat. But again, go by the color. Make sure it's ripe before you try to eat it. This particular tree and all the trees in my landscape are the dark maroon, almost black variety. I have no idea what the name is. This is from seed. It produces prolific amounts of fruit. They are absolutely wonderful. All my trees that are old enough to produce fruit are this dark maroon color, all from seed. And we have traced these seeds all the way back to about 60 years ago. And they've been handed down from family to family to family. So this is just another good example of when people tell you don't bother planting seeds, they won't come true. Ignore them. Plant every seed you can get. We get wonderful, wonderful fruit trees. All right, utilitarian uses. Well, some people in some cultures will take the leaves and the branches, small branches, and lay them down on the floor in their houses. And then when they walk over the leaves, it crushes them and it releases a smell. And these smell great. I love the way Surinam cherry smells. And they use it as a bug repellent. Neat. I'm actually thinking about when I get ready to prune this off, throwing a handful of it down on top of a fire ant bed and see if it dissuades the fire ants and maybe they'll move along. It won't hurt to try. You can use the wood for kindling, for firewood. You can put the wood in your smokers or your grills and smoke your meat with it. You can build with it. Fences, trellises, lightweight projects. Medicinal uses. There's pages of medicinal uses if you'd like to look into that. Not only are the cherries edible, but so are the leaves. You can make tea with the leaves. Use the fresh green ones, steep them just like you do any tea. In small amounts, folks. Always in small amounts when you're working with edible wilds. But just wonderful. I can't wait. It won't be long at all. And they are going to start producing cherries. Now, the tree is really, really stressed because of the cold weather. Tropical, they don't like anything down below 60, 50, they get upset. 40s, they get mad at us and drop all their leaves. But it will flush back. And you can see this cluster here is much greener and it was protected some. So in the follow-up video, we'll talk more about the seeds themselves, more about the fruit itself. But just know it has all these great, great qualities. You have to have a ripe berry. You will not like it if it's not ripe. This makes a wonderful hedge plant. Makes a wonderful privacy fence. So, let's talk about one more thing. I grew up with Surinam cherries. When I was 7 or 8 years old, we had 2 huge Surinam cherries out beside our house. They were so old and so large that the canopies had grown together. And my mom went out, and in between the 2 trunks, she cleaned it out, pruned it out, and there was enough room for me to put a little table and chair in. I have very fond memories of Surinam cherry. Then when it was fruiting, hey, I could just reach up, grab the ripe ones, and eat them. And I got this fantastic smell all the time. So one of the first things I did was go ahead and save some of those cherry pits or seeds and plant my own. And she got them from my grandmother. Propagation, seeds. You can do cuttings, you can do air layering, you can do grafting. So if you have a Surinam cherry, it makes wonderful seedlings. They're tough, they're vigorous, disease, pest resistant. But if you don't like the cherry, or if you want them to fruit a little faster, you can always graft on top with scions from trees that you like. It takes average 3 to 5 years to start producing fruit from seed. Sometimes you can cut that down a little bit by being a little more attentive to the plant's requirements. Feeding it a little more often, making sure it never goes hungry, making sure it never is dry. Adult plants are drought resistant, but they will freeze and they can die all the way back in the freeze. Chances are, if it's not too hard of a freeze, it's going to come back. And while I'm right here, let me show you something. If you happen to notice these little mossy looking things, this is a Tillandsia. It's an air plant. One of the common names is ball moss. It's a bromeliad. It's in the Bromeliaceae family. It's not moss. It's not a parasite. It's not a hemiparasite. It's not a symbiotic relationship. All it is the moss is using the Surinam cherry as a host plant. It does absolutely no harm to it. In fact, the moss can actually attract good little bugs. And I know this kind of sounds counterproductive, but sometimes those bugs will attract more birds and bug-eating insects to your tree. And while they're there, they can snack on other insects that you might not want. So, circle of life, folks, circle of life. All right, I'm going to come out, prune this all up. I'll make a video when the cherries get started. Like I said, let's talk about the elephant in the room. In this case, it's the worm in the fruit. Surinam cherry has a really bad, I hate to use the word bad, reputation of having little worms in the cherries. Because Surinam cherry isn't the only one. Strawberries are huge for it. Mangoes, oranges, apples, pears, any fruit can have it. But Surinam is so soft and so sweet. The fruit flies just absolutely love it. So the little white wiggly things that you sometimes find in your Surinam cherry is not a worm. It's a larvae from the fruit fly. I grew up eating them. Everyone around here grew up eating them. Everyone in the southeast grew up eating them. Now, if I see them, I do pick them out. And they are now telling everybody, every piece of produce, every piece of fruit that you bring into your house, make sure you wash it immediately. It can have fruit fly eggs and larvae on it. Plus all the pesticides and chemicals that the growers use today, unless you're lucky and find an organic place to get your materials at. Nice. I'm going to come back and do another video because I have a couple ideas in mind and ways to help, hopefully, keep the fruit fly population down. So we'll do that later. Well, actually, I'll have to do it in about the next week because the fruit flies are going to start hatching out, and we'll talk a bit about the life cycle and how they affect the fruit and just some simple DIY things that you can do without buying chemicals. I hope you can join me for those other videos. But again, I wanted to get this out and show you this tree. So if you're new to growing Surinam cherries and you live in an area, something like ours, where you do get some cold weather, don't worry about it. The tree is stressed. It's going to drop all of those yucky looking leaves and flesh out with beautiful green foliage. And if it's not doing it very fast, There's some ways I can share with you later on how to help a stressed plant. I hope you can join me, and until then, have a fantastic day.